This happened to me about a year ago, and I still get chills just thinking about it. It was around 2:30 a.m. when I finished my shift at the restaurant. I was exhausted, but the drive home would be quick. I took the back roads to avoid the highway, empty, dark, and quiet, just the way I liked it at night. The fog was thick, so thick I could barely see a few feet ahead. My headlights cut through the mist in weak yellow beams. The road was narrow, flanked by dense woods on both sides. I felt uneasy, but I was used to it. I'd driven this route 100 times. I glanced in the rearview mirror, just a habit. There was a car behind me. Not unusual. Late-night drivers sometimes take this road, but there was something strange. The car was too close. It didn't even have a front license plate. I shrugged it off and focused on the road, but every time I looked back, the car was right there, trailing inches behind me. No matter how fast I went, it stayed glued to my bumper. I checked the side mirror. Still nothing. The road was empty except for me and that car, just behind me, headlights glaring. I felt my anxiety spike. I tried speeding up, but it didn't help. The car kept pace with me. I checked again, and this time I swear I saw something. No one was in the driver's seat. I looked away quickly, heart hammering. What the hell? I floored it, pushing my car to its limit. The sedan stayed right there, as if mocking my every move. I checked the mirror again, and this time the headlights were blinding. I couldn't see anything else. The road ahead was a blur. Panic hit me like a wave. I had to stop. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking as I pulled over to the side of the road. I threw the car in park and sat there for a second, staring ahead into the fog. The car behind me didn't pass. I didn't hear the engine slow or rev, just an eerie silence. I took a deep breath and turned to look back in my mirror, half expecting to see the sedan still right behind me. But there was nothing. The road was empty. No car, not even the faintest sign of headlights in the distance. I felt a wave of relief, but it was short-lived. Something wasn't right. My heart was still pounding, my mind racing. How had that car just disappeared like that? I started driving again, slowly, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. The fog was even thicker now. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, expecting to see the sedan again, but it wasn't there. For a while, I convinced myself it was just my nerves. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. Then I heard it, knock, knock, on the driver's side window. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. Slowly, I turned my head toward the sound. And there he was, a man, standing just outside my car. His face was pressed up against the glass. His eyes were wide, unnaturally so, as if they had been stretched open. His face was pale, his clothes ragged, like he hadn't slept or eaten in days. He didn't say anything, just stared. I couldn't look away. I should have driven off. I should have screamed or done anything, but I was paralyzed. The man raised his hand and then, knock, knock, software persistent. I could barely hear anything over the pounding of my own heart, but I slowly reached for the window button. My hand was shaking uncontrollably. I had to get out of there. But just before I pressed it, I realized something terrifying. I hadn't stopped the car. I had never pulled over. My car was still rolling forward, barely moving, but moving. My foot wasn't on the brake. I wasn't even stopped. It was the weirdest feeling, like I was both there and not there at the same time. I snapped my head back to the rearview mirror. The sedan was gone. There was nothing there. I turned back to look at the man outside my window. He was still standing there, staring at me, his face inches from the glass. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed my foot on the gas, peeling out, my tires screeching against the road. I didn't dare look back. I just drove, fast. I kept going for miles, my hands gripped tightly on the wheel, my chest tight with fear. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I was shaking so hard I could barely open the door. I ran inside, locked every door, and sat in the dark, trying to make sense of it all. I thought I'd be safe. I thought it was over. But that's when I noticed something chilling. My rearview mirror, it was cracked, just barely, but enough to catch the light. I stepped closer to get a better look, and that's when I saw it, the faint outline of a face in the mirror, the same hollow, pale eyes, the same expressionless stare. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and looked again. The face was still there, but this time, it wasn't in the mirror. It was in the back seat, right behind me. It happened a few months ago, and I still have trouble sleeping in the dark. I was home alone that night. My parents were out visiting relatives, and my younger brother was at a sleepover. It was around 11 p.m. when I finished some work on my laptop and decided to head upstairs to bed. The house was quiet, and the only sounds were the faint creaks of the old wooden floors. I've always liked it quiet, but that night it felt different. The silence felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me. I shook it off, thinking I was just being paranoid. As I climbed the stairs, I heard something that made me stop. Footsteps. But they weren't mine. They were slow, deliberate, as if someone was pacing around upstairs. I froze, trying to listen, my heart starting to race. My first thought was that it was my brother coming home early from the sleepover. But then I remembered, he was supposed to be gone all night. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" Nothing, just silence. I felt my stomach tighten. The footsteps continued, and now it was as if they were getting closer. I wasn't sure what to do. I thought about running downstairs, but instead I took a deep breath and slowly started to move up the stairs. That's when I saw it, a shadow. It was moving across the top of the staircase, stretching and shifting as if it didn't belong to anything. It wasn't the shape of a person, just a dark, unnatural blotch of blackness, as though it was swallowing the light around it. I couldn't tear my eyes away. The shadow moved, jerky, almost inhuman, and it shifted toward the hallway. It stopped right outside my parents' bedroom. I stood frozen, my heart hammered in my chest. I wanted to scream, but my voice felt stuck in my throat. I tried calling again, "Mom? Dad?" But there was nothing, no sound. I knew something was wrong. That shadow shouldn't have been there. It didn't make sense. Before I could think, my legs moved on their own. I turned and ran down the stairs, bursting out the front door into the cold night air. I didn't stop running until I was a few houses down, out of breath, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I don't know how long I stayed outside, maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. But eventually I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. The house was old, creaky, of course it was just the wind. When I went back inside, everything felt off. The air was thick, heavy with something I couldn't name. I didn't want to go upstairs, but I felt like I had to. So reluctantly, I went up to check things out, half expecting to find nothing. But when I reached the top of the stairs, that same feeling of dread hit me again. The hallway was dark, and all the doors were slightly ajar. The air was cold, colder than it should have been. I walked down the hall toward my parents' bedroom, my feet almost dragging when I saw it again. The shadow. It was stretched across the far wall, darker than anything in the room, as if it was absorbing the light. It wasn't on the floor or the ceiling. It was only in the mirror across the hallway, standing in the reflection. My body went rigid. I knew it wasn't right. It didn't belong. The shadow didn't reflect reality. It was something else, something twisted. It moved closer in the mirror, following my every step, and it wasn't a shadow of me or anything in the room. It was wrong. I backed up slowly, my pulse thudding in my ears. I wanted to turn and run, but my feet felt frozen to the floor. The shadow stretched further, and I could see it. It had shape now. It had arms, a twisted form, like it was trying to step out of the reflection and into the real world. I turned and ran out of the room, not even stopping to look back. My chest was tight, my throat burning. I went straight downstairs out of the house and didn't stop until I was on the street. I couldn't sleep in that house after that night. For days I stayed with a friend, afraid to go back. It felt like something was in the house with me, waiting, but I couldn't avoid it forever. A week later I went back. I walked in, feeling the weight of the silence again. The house felt colder than I remembered, but I was determined to face it. I needed to know what was happening. I went straight to my parents' room. The mirror was still there, sitting innocently on the wall. But when I looked at it, I saw it. The shadow was gone. Relieved, I stepped closer, thinking maybe it had all just been in my head. But then I saw something on the glass, etched into the mirror, carved into the surface so deep I could barely see the reflection anymore, was my name, Jenna, and under it, in jagged, frantic letters, "I'm still here."